The most important thing of all is to be okay with being alone sometimes, with actually finding it, oddly enough, kind of pleasurable to not have all those annoying noises, those annoying people, all that narcissism out there, all that crap that we have to deal with. Yeah, I like being alone sometimes. I like just sitting in the bathtub and reading a book. I like just watching a movie, etc. by myself. If you can do that, if you can find pleasure in being alone, then loneliness loses a lot of its sting. How to deal with loneliness. And I think it's a very human thing. We've all dealt with it. I know I dealt with it particularly when I was younger a lot, when I was in my 20s, etc. I remember once I was in Rome 20 years ago or so. I was entering a restaurant to eat, and I was by myself in a crowded restaurant, and the waiter asked me if I was alone, and I said, yes, kind of shamefully. Yeah, I'm alone. He said in Italian, "Meo solo mala," and that expression has stuck with me for many, many years. It was better to be alone than to be accompanied with someone bad, or to have bad company. So the idea is that you have to kind of sometimes like to be with yourself. And sometimes being with other people can be a drag, can be painful. There can be people that can inflict a lot of pain on you. And so sometimes the grass is always greener. And I would often think about, and not to say that it doesn't hurt to be alone, and because we're a social animal, but maybe it's better that I don't have to be around all of these annoying people, and I can fill my time with other things. So reading books, watching movies, etc. I'm not alone because I'm with other people, I'm with other spirits. Of course, not saying this is the perfect answer, but you have to be able to like to be alone is a very important skill in life, because you're inevitably going to be facing such moments. And so you have to be able to like your own thoughts, to be interested in your own ideas, to be reading books, to be doing things that excite you. And if you're excited in your spirit, then you're not really alone. When I'm reading a great book, I don't feel so alone. Yes, I would like to share it with somebody else, but these are ways to kind of alleviate that. The other thing is to understand that you think that you're the only person like that. Everybody goes through that feeling. We're living in a culture now where loneliness is like an epidemic, and the books are being written about it. People are bowling by themselves. There's a whole book written about that. It's a culture where we're not as social as we used to be. We're so much more virtual. So, you're not alone in that. So, you're not alone in your loneliness. It's very human. Other people are experiencing that, and be aware of it. How do you overcome it? You have to become more social. You have to put yourself out in this world and not be so virtual. Loneliness and being alone has a momentum to it. And I know it. I've experienced it myself. Because being a writer, you're alone. Believe me, I'm alone a lot. When you're alone a lot, you get more and more afraid. You get more and more timid. Encountering people becomes difficult, painful. It's like a skill that you've lost. It's a feel that you've lost, and it's harder to get back, and you don't think of it that way. You think of, I don't want to go to that party. You've got to force yourself in the opposite direction. You've got to build that opposite momentum, because the more you're out in the world, the more that you're social, the more that you're meeting people, the more that you will have chances for finding somebody that has similar interests to you. So, if online you're able to find people with similar interests to you and share that, that's great. But find a way to make it not so virtual. Meet people. Go to these places where there are people who are like-minded to you. Force yourself to become more social. So, there'll be more opportunities to meet other people. But the most important thing of all is to be okay with being alone sometimes, with actually finding it, oddly enough, kind of pleasurable to not have all those annoying noises, those annoying people, all that narcissism out there, all that crap that we have to deal with. Yeah, I like being alone sometimes. I like just sitting in the bathtub and reading a book. I like just watching a movie, etc. by myself. If you can do that, if you can find pleasure in being alone, then loneliness loses a lot of its sting. And then the other thing is to force yourself to develop that social muscle that we all have. It's not a bad thing necessarily to be lonely. Part of the problem of loneliness is it's got this taboo against it, this bad name, like it's terrible to be lonely, terrible to be alone, right? And so you feel shamed for the fact that you're lonely. But actually, it's extremely important in life to be alone sometimes, and to be able to be on your own, and to think about yourself, and to kind of come to terms with who you are, and to embrace what makes you different. And you can't do that if you feel ashamed about being lonely, or if you can't ever be alone. So, knowing how to be alone is very important. It's what will make you successful, will bring you skills. So don't think of it as something necessarily terribly negative in your life. But the other thing is you have to force yourself. You force yourself to go to the gym, to develop muscles and become stronger. You have to force yourself to interact with people and get out of your phone and have real experiences instead of virtual experiences. And if you do that 10 times a month, just like going to the gym 10 times a month, your social skills will get better and better. Your social muscle will get better and better, and you'll feel better about interacting with people. On that point, I remember law, I think it's law 18, I'm just having a look, about isolation. Yeah, do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. Yeah, solitude is not a defense, because it cuts you off from valuable information, allies, and opportunities. There's a difference, isn't there, between being lonely and being alone? Because being alone is one thing, but the state of loneliness feels like it's a slightly different proposition. Well, it's the difference between you feel very unhappy that you're not connecting to other people. We're a social animal, right? And you feel like people don't like you, they don't respect you, that you can't interact with them on a level that's meaningful. Whereas the feeling of being alone for me, wow, I don't have to be around ugly, idiotic people. I can just be by myself. I can read a good book. I don't have to interact with people whose ideas I don't like. I can just be myself and be as weird as I want. Wow, what a relief. I'm so happy being alone. Now, I'm not like that all the time. It would be terrible. But sometimes I do feel that way, and that's the difference. And that's a good thing. I remember once I was on an aeroplane and I saw a young woman who was by herself, and I could sense that it was driving her crazy, and she had to use her phone to never feel alone, right? Even in the middle when we're flying over the ocean, she had to somehow connect onto the internet and be sending emails and texts and anything. And I got this kind of desperation in her, this intuition, this feeling that being alone was just horrifying for her, and I think that's not a good thing. I think it's a terrible thing. So yes, isolation is bad. You're a social animal. You're meant to be around other people. But if you can't be alone, you can't ever figure out what makes you different and what makes you unique. So you have to be able to play both sides of the game, to listen to that voice, inside, to turn inwards. It is hard to turn inwards when you never have moments of solitude. I guess when you said you were suicidal in your earlier years, What lifted you out of that state? Well, I had a girlfriend who was very understanding, who helped me a lot, so I wasn't completely alone. And then a little tiny voice inside of me was saying, you have interesting thoughts. You're a strange person, Robert. I've always been strange. I never was like other people. And even in high school, I was always something off about me, which could be made me lonely, which can make me be a problem. But I kept saying, there's something different and off about you, right? And you have skills as a writer. It's going to happen someday. Don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. Keep trying, right? And so finally, I'm 36 years old. I was in Italy at the lowest point of my life. And then I met this man there who was a book packager, Joost Ellers. And he asked me if I had an idea for a book. And suddenly I almost get emotional just thinking about everything just shifted inside of me. It's like, I could write a non-fiction book. And I just improvised what would turn into the 48 Laws of Power. He got so excited, he said, I will pay you to write I forget what the word is, to sell it, and then I'll pay you to live while you write it. And so suddenly it went from darkness to light because I had a purpose and all of my misery. You know, I could take all of the bad bosses I had, all of the horrible psychotic bosses who were so stupid and so political and so manipulative, and I could go, wow, I've got all this material to write the 48 laws of power. All my worst experiences can go into this book. It all has purpose for it. I'm not saying that's going to happen to everybody, but I was literally at that moment before it happened pretty much near rock bottom. And I asked my wife, what would have happened if this didn't turn out? Would I have committed suicide? Would I, if he'd gone the same path and done some hack job? I'd probably be incredibly overweight and alcoholic, and I might have already died of a heart attack. Or maybe I would have found my way to something else. But it was a really, really low point in my life. Purpose. Yeah, it's crazy how it can lift you out of darkness. It can turn the lights on. Yeah, it's just so unbelievably hard to find for so many people. I mean, you're not going to find it in your bedroom necessarily sat there thinking, but you know, opportunities come. You just have to be ready for them. So, I had this opportunity that came to me, and you might say, well, that's lucky, that's never going to happen to me. But it will happen to you. You're just not ready for it. You're just not recognizing it. Some person will cross your path that can lift you out of what you're doing, who could connect you, but you're not paying attention. You're not ready for it. You don't think you deserve it. So, there is opportunity every day of the week. It's around you is what I'm trying to say. There's so many studies, and there was one on TV by, I think it was Darren Brown, the illusionist, that shows certain types of people are pessimistic towards opportunity. And when you do studies and there's one particular study where they have a newspaper and they give it to one group of people who I think are pessimists and one group of people that are optimists, and the researchers say, when you find the £100 voucher or $100 voucher, just come back to us. And what happens is they scroll through the newspaper and the pessimists never find it. But on the first page of the newspaper it says, stop the stud, stop, go to the researchers now, you've won $100. The optimists find it. And Dan Brown did a similar thing, the illusionist, in the street where he put, I think it was like a £50 or $100 note in the middle of the street as they were walking down the street. And the optimist find it, they see it. But the pessimist just walked right past it. Yeah, I think it was a winning scratch card potentially. And that really opened my mind to my state, my mental state. My psychology is determining whether I see these opportunities or totally miss them. And then it's almost this downward spiral, because then I'll think, God, I'm such an unlucky person, right? Without realizing that I'm playing a really important role in creating my own fortune or misfortune, right? Yeah. I have a chapter in Laws of Human Nature about the nature of your attitude creates your circumstances, which is sort of the same thing you're saying, which is, there are two kinds of attitudes that I talk about. One is an attitude that's closing, that's constrictive, that's narrow, and there's one that's expansive and open. You could call that pessimistic and optimistic, but the closed attitude is you're only seeing life through this narrow little spectrum where everything is bad, people don't like you, there's hostility all around you. And what that means is you're not seeing reality, you're creating reality. You're creating that reality, you're seeing it, and that's what happens to you. The expansive attitude is, life is amazing. All these incredible things are possible. I have hope any moment there could be an opportunity, and that's not reality either. But you're going to create that reality by feeling that way and seizing an opportunity, the smallest crumb of an opportunity. You're going to create those good circumstances. So by your attitude, you create the bad things that happen to you in life. One of the sort of adjacent points here about purposelessness, about loneliness, about the struggles and plights of young men in the world that they face and young women, is the conversation around pornography. If you go on many of the social media apps these days, you will be exposed to pretty explicit pornography. Whether you were searching for it or not, there's certain apps in particular where, even if I'm scrolling on my feed, Certain things will pop up and I go, Jesus Christ, like, I'm at work here. And I was thinking about this more broadly, because the studies show that I think it's like 80% of men and about 40% of women in the United States use pornography. And I wondered if you had a view on how it robs us of the hard work it takes to form romantic relationships. And if the act of consuming pornography is robbing us of the desire for the real thing, well, it's an addiction. And you have to understand that you are being manipulated, that you are being programmed, that these people have figured out exactly the kinds of things, the kinds of images that are going to hook you, and you're being played. You're a fool, they're playing with you. Just like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook knows all the algorithms to hook you to the news feed. You're being played by the images. They know how to create and keep you always wanting more. Just like fast food has all these tricks to constantly be eating their Doritos or whatever it is. Okay. But the other thing is, so I'm not going to preach and moralize about pornography from a prudish aspect of it because I'm not approved. But I have a chapter in the book that I'm writing on the sublime, on what I call love sublime, and the act of loving not God, not the universe, but another human being. An individual man or woman, gay or straight or whatever it is, and how sublime that is. And what it is, in that relationship, the boundaries between the two of you are allowed to melt, and your ego can soften, and you can feel their world, and they can feel your world, and you have a connection that for a social animal is the highest form of connection. It's superior to a religious connection. I'm sorry. And what it requires is we have the expression, falling in love. And it literally is falling. It's like you fall. You're open and you're vulnerable and you're letting yourself fall. And when you're not, what stops you from doing that is you don't want to be hurt. You don't want to be vulnerable, right? Because if you open yourself to someone else, you're likely to get hurt. And so the moment there's a disagreement between you, or there's a moment where a friend says something nasty about this person you're interested in, you stop falling, you cut it off, and that romantic thing ends and dies. But if you get past that, and you allow yourself to open up completely, and you just keep falling, this incredible thing can happen. And I describe it to you, and I describe it the dynamics of that, and examples of that, and why for a social animal, it's like the ultimate experience. And so pornography is completely robbing you of that because love of another human being is a sense of enchantment, right? There's like this spark that's happening, this electricity, and it's obviously sex is involved. So it's a very physical relationship as well, but it goes beyond that. It also has a kind of spiritual component, right? But it's a sense of enchantment where the world becomes alive to you. Everything is beautiful in the world in those moments, right? And pornography is disenchanting you from everything. It's making it all mechanical and ugly and it has no romance to it. It has no dimension to it. It's almost as if the two humans involved in it, or however, are like machine parts, right? They're not human anymore, and there's no emotion involved. There's no kind of spiritual connection. It's depressing. It's really, really depressing. When I see it, I feel really sorry that I experienced this, and I feel really sorry for the people who are in that industry. I find it really, really ugly and alienating. Now, I'm not, as I said, a prudent I could watch a movie, a great movie with a love scene in it, and it's very exciting and beautiful. But the seduction element, the element of, I saw a movie recently, a Japanese movie by the great director Ozu from the 50s, and there was a man who was married, and he was about to have an affair with this woman who was kind of seducing him, and they had this kiss. I thought, wow, I was getting used, turned on, but I was getting really excited. It was so full of emotion and energy, and it made the sexual element so much more powerful by the element of romance, by the element of something kind of transgressive. There was no nude bodies, there was no sex you ever get to see, but the lead up to it and the nature of the emotions involved made it to me deeply, deeply exciting. And if young men in particular can't have that experience, If everything is so mechanical, is so computerized, it's going to be like AI. It's going to be like AI sex, then you're losing your soul. You're losing your capacity for really falling in love, for really having that kind of dimensional experience, which, by the way, can be extremely physical, and it can only last for 3 months. I'm not saying it has to be 20 years with one woman or one man. It could be for 3 months, but it enriches you. It makes you more human. I've invested more than £1 million into this company, Perfect TED, and they're also a sponsor of this podcast. I switched over to using matcha as my dominant energy source, and that's where Perfect TED comes in. They have the matcha powders, they have the matcha drinks, they have the pods, and all of this keeps me focused throughout a very, very long recording day, no matter what's going on. And their team is obsessed with quality, which is why they source their ceremonial-grade matcha from Japan. So, when people say to me that they don't like the taste of matcha, I'm guessing that they haven't tried Perfect TED. Unlike low-quality matcha that has a bitter, grassy taste, Perfect TED is smooth and naturally sweet. And without knowing it, you're probably a Perfect TED customer already if you're getting your matcha at places like Blank Street or Joe in the Juice. But now, you can make it yourself at home. So, give it a try, and we'll see if you still don't like matcha. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 40% off our matcha if you try it today. Head to perfected.com and use code STEEN40. Or if you're in a supermarket, you can get it at Tesco's or Holland & Barrett, or in the Netherlands at Albert Heijn. And those of you in the US, you can get it on Amazon. The other thing that a couple of psychologists on my podcast before have alluded to on this subject is that they told me about a study with rats, where they messed with the part of the rat's brain that is responsible for causing dopamine. And then, when they put food in front of the rat's mouth, if the rat it was like 6 inches from the rat's mouth, the rat would starve to death because they had impacted the rat's dopamine. So, it no longer had motivation. And they speak of dopamine as this sort of motivation chemical. It's the thing that gets you to take action. So if you're frying your dopamine receptors by doing these sort of high dopamine activities, right? Right. I'm wondering if you're going to, if we're sort of breeding a culture of lower motivation individuals. And because of this thesis, I was kind of looking at some studies around this. And it does say that constant exposure to high dopamine activities can lead to dopamine desensitization or deregulation of dopamine receptors. And then this can lead to a significant reduction in your motivation. And there's multiple studies here that point in this direction. So I'm wondering how, when I look at some of the stats around purposeless and people having less partners and being more sexless, if there's a through in here that when you make dopamine easy through pornography, we're less likely to go in, get up out of our bedroom, and take an action. Yeah, but it's not just pornography. There's too much of that in social media as well, on other levels. So, you have to understand what it means to be a human being, first of all. And we're physical animals. We can't be in our heads all the time. We think with our bodies, right? We think with the chemicals mixing in our bodies. We're very physical, and we're social animals to the core. And that social animal, what makes us superior, is that we connect. I can kind of look at you and I can maybe understand what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and we can have a discussion, and our ideas can go back and forth and connect and go to higher levels of understanding or lower levels of disagreement. But that's what it means to be a human being. You're not this fucking AI machine. You're not a bot. You're not an algorithm. You're not a little piece of data that Mark Zuckerberg can mix with. You're a human being with a body, with physical problems, with hormones, with emotions that are coursing through you. And you have to become a physical creature, which means doing things in the world, taking action, working, building a business, doing things with your hands, exercise, meeting people, be inside of your bodies. And when you're in pornography, you're disembodied, you're not in your body. You might be wanking off as far as I know, probably are. but you're not really inside of your body in any meaningful way. And so it's like, my hope, if there's any hope, is that, and there's seeds of it in the world now where young people are going,